The auctions are here in World of Tanks Blitz, and there are going to be 136 vehicles that will be sold over the next 32 days of the game, which is absolutely diabolical when you think about it. This is the largest auction that Wargaming has ever had, and I'm not sure why they're doing this, but indeed they are selling a ridiculous amount of tanks. Something that is super disappointing is not a single new vehicle is being sold in the auctions. I was hoping something like the Prowler, the Toxic, or the AMX CLC was being released, but nope, none of them. So yeah, that's a bit lame. But the good news is that I do know every single vehicle that is going to be sold in the auction and the order in which they're going to be released. And that is exactly what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be going through the list of vehicles. I'm not necessarily going to list each one's gold value because there's just too many, but I'm going to say if they're a good tank or a bad tank. We already have the Chieftain Chimera T28 Defender. Chieftain's already sold out. Chimera, great tank. T28 Defender, solid. And the 1357 is a very fun tank and can do very well. Next up, we have the M60, Senlac, Caliban, and Gsor. The M60 is alright, but I do find it a worse M48 Patton. Senlac is a worse FE301. The Caliban is an absolute blast. It's an FE2 and 5B 183 in Tier 8, but kind of mediocre. Wouldn't really recommend to get it unless you just want to be able to bust. I don't know. Gsor is an absolutely incredible Tier 8 and probably the best of the Tier 8s we've seen so far. Scrolling down, we have the AMX 30 AMX 30 Proto, Lorraine 40 ton, Scorpion G, and Lycan. Tanks out of this four that I'd recommend to look at, honestly, just the Scorpion. The Proto's decent, but I wouldn't say it's anything insane, especially due to the lower levels of pen. It's worth realistically about 8,000 gold. The Scorpion G, I'd say, is about at 6,000 gold. Badger, FCM 50 ton, Object 252, and SU 130 PM. Well, the Badger is great, but its traverse speed is really, really poor. You do have to keep that in mind. I'd say 15,000 gold. FCM 50 ton is just don't get it. Object 252, it's pretty boring. If you're a beginner, it's a great tank to get. Apart from that, I wouldn't really recommend it. And the SU 130 PM is just a flat better Scorpion G, so I'd get the SU 130 PM over the Scorpion. That's my personal opinion, at least. We have the 121B, Action 10, AMX, CDC, and Pharaoh. I would say the Action 10 and 121B are great. I wouldn't recommend to get the CDC or Pharaoh. 121B is worth about 16,000 gold, and the Action 10 is worth, I'd say, 7,000 gold. Apart from that, wouldn't recommend the other two. WZ-114, IS-3 Defender, Progetto 46, and Super Pershing. Don't ever consider getting the Super Pershing. 114 is pretty solid. It's got 2,400 health. It's got a high alpha at 470. It's got 9 degrees of gun depression. Stupid good turret armor. I'd say it's worth about 10 to 8,000 gold. IS-3 Defender it's a pretty fun vehicle, actually. They buffed its armor to a point now where it's really, really good. And it's got 7 degrees of gun depression, 400 alpha, an auto loading gun. I'd say it's worth about 5 to 6,000 gold. Progetto 46 as well, 5 to 6,000 gold, just because of the amount of times Wargaming sold it. The next week, or next days, should I say, T95E6, Chrysler K, Panzer 58 Moots, and the Annihilator. Obviously, the Annihilator, get your hands on it. I don't know how much they're going to sell it for. Judging that they sold the Dracula in the Christmas auctions for 10,000 gold, I would assume the Annihilator might even be more, might be 15,000 gold for this tank. I mean, if you want the most overpowered tank in the game, get it. If you don't, then don't get it. Either way, it's the first time it's sold outside of crates, so really make your own decision from there. Panzer 58 Moots, don't consider getting it. E6 and Chrysler K are both amazing. I think the Chrysler K is one of the most underrated tier 8s in the game, and if you want what I consider to be a incredibly overpowered tier 8 heavy, the Chrysler K is great. Pick it up for 6,000 to 7,000 gold. T95E6 is a fantastic tier 10. It's probably the best tier 10 heavy in the game. The E6, I'd say, is worth anywhere from 17 to 16,000 gold. It'll be probably cheaper than that, but that's how much I'd say it's worth. So if it's less than that amount of gold, I'd definitely consider picking it up. The K91 Bosch Chatillon Barask, KV5, and LT432. Well, the LT432 was literally given away for free just not too long ago, so I can't really recommend to buy that unless you really want it, but I'm not sure why you wouldn't have already had it in your garage. KV5 is an absolute beast. It's the number one performing tier 8 in the game, so I definitely recommend to pick up the KV5, especially if you're a beginner. 5,000 to 4,000 gold is a decent deal for that vehicle. Bosch Chatillon Barask is the number one performing medium in tier 8. It is an incredibly overpowered vehicle, especially if you're decent at the game. I'd be willing to say the Barask is worth 6,000 to 7,000 gold. K91 is one of the best tier 9s, another great vehicle. This is a solid lot here. K91 is worth, I'd say, about 8,000 to 9,000 gold. It's one of the better tier 9 heavies. It's got solid DPM, gun depression, and overall capabilities. All right, well, we're a third of the way through the list. Next up, we have the VK90 M6 A2N Experimental, Defender Mark 1, and Elephant. Don't get the Elephant, waste. M6 Experimental is a fun vehicle. I'd say it's worth about 6,000 to 5,000 gold. VK9001P is worth about 15 to 16,000 gold. It is an incredibly strong vehicle, and it's a solid performer. The only problem is right now the mediums are really the meta, so if you're planning on buying it, hoping that at some point Wargaming will buff the heavies and nerf the mediums, or, you know, something along those lines, then it's great. But I'd say right now it's just all right. The Defender Mark 1 is one of the best tier 8 in the game. It's incredibly overpowered when you put it in a haul down position. I'd say the Defender Mark 1 is worth 6,000 to 7,000 gold. It is such an incredibly strong vehicle. Kampfpanzer 70, WZ-121 GFT, Panther 88, and Titan HND. Do not get the Titan HND. It's not worth it. The Panther 88 is not worth it either, especially when the Tech Tree Panther is just stronger. WZ-120 GFT and Kampfpanzer 70 are really the two vehicles you should consider picking up. Kampfpanzer, I'd say, is worth 10,000 to 8,000 gold. It'll probably be cheaper than that, but I think the Kampfpanzer 70 is one of the most enjoyable tanks in the game, and not only that, after it got buffed to 7 degrees of gun depression with its ridiculously good accurate gun and everything else, I honestly put it into the overpowered category. I would definitely recommend to get your hands on the Kampfpanzer. WZ-120 GFT is a super solid tier 8 tank destroyer, very fun, very mobile. Overall, solid vehicle. I'd say 6,000 to 5,000 gold for that tank. We have the Super Conqueror M4 Titan Strife and T95E2. Don't get the T95E2. It's a mediocre medium. It's outdated. Titan Strife is fun. It's actually a solid super heavy, and I did enjoy playing in it. I'd say 6,000 to 5,000 gold is a decent deal. However, because this is the first time it's being sold outside of crates, you can expect it to be a lot more than 6,000 gold. M4 is actually really underrated, and I can tell you it will be fairly inexpensive. I'd say 5,000 gold is a good deal for the M4 It's got a really solid gun, incredible levels of turn armor, solid mobility, and it's got really good abilities in game modes like Mad Games, so because of that, it's a really, really good vehicle. Super Conqueror is one of the best tier 10 heavies in the game, right up there next to the T95E6. It's got mobility, gun depression, armor. Definitely recommend to pick up the Super Conqueror. I would say 16 to 18,000 gold is legitimately a good deal for the tank. Obviously, it's going to be sold for less than 18,000, but like, it's a great tank. I would say pick it up for 16,000 gold if you can get it for that price tag. Object 752 112 Glacial Canonian Jagdpanzer Skoda. Don't get the Skoda T45. Absolute waste. Canonian Jagdpanzer is great if you like Leopard 1 level accuracy on a tier 8 tank destroyer. It's literally just a Leopard 1 gun with less DPM. It's great. Super mobile. It's a fun tank. I'd say 4,000 to 5,000 gold. 112 Glacial, don't pick it up. Waste unless Wargaming buffs it at some point in the future. And then the Object 752 is obviously like the most overpowered tank in the game at tier 9, but do remember, I don't know if my store, no, I'm not going to wait for my game to load. The 752, I think, is right now 12,500 gold, and you can just buy it flat out. So if you really want the 752, just buy it for 12,000 gold. I don't know if it'll become cheaper in the auctions. Maybe it'll be 10,000 gold, but either way, 12,000 to 10,000 gold is a really good deal for the 752, and definitely something I would recommend to pick up. The AMX-30, Turtle Mark 1, Samwa SM, and CS-52 Lease. Well, I'm pretty sure this AMX-30 is actually... Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go back. Pretty sure the AMX-30 is actually the AMX-30B, so we can fix that by adding a B there. But yes, I'm pretty sure it's the AMX-30B. I would say the CS-52 Lease is solid. 3,000 gold to 2,500 is a good pickup. Samwa SM is actually really, really solid. Very underrated. Incredible levels of hull armor. It's fairly mobile. It's got a solid gun. Its accuracy is terrible, just like the AMX M4, but everything else about the tank is great. I'd say 5,000 to 6,000 gold. Don't get the Turtle Mark 1. And I really wouldn't recommend to get the 30B. They nerfed it for some reason, and yeah, I just wouldn't recommend to get it. I know there's other content creators who don't know it's nerfed. It's kind of goofy, but yeah, don't get the 30B. I would say if you did really want it, 14 to 13,000 gold is a decent deal. TL7 120, Soul Leader, AMX Alt Proto, M41D. M41D is a super fun tank. 2,000 to 3,000 gold is a decent deal. AMX Alt Proto, I just wouldn't recommend to get it. It's mid. It's not a bad tank. It's actually fairly all right, but that's not a great description for a vehicle that you'd want to spend your gold on. I'd say 5,000 to 4,000 gold for the All Proto. Soul Eater, super, super fun. It's one of the most fun tier 8 tank destroyers in the game. I'd say 6,000 to 8,000 gold is a good deal for the Soul Eater. TL7 120, mid. Very mid. I'd say to not get your hands on it because of the fact it has such bad reverse speed. It does have a good armor profile. It's got a solid gun. It's an American 120, so it's all right in that way, but I'd say it's worth about 7,000 gold. The AMX M454, Skoda T27, Skoda T56, and TSL7 Defender. Well, the AMX M454 is one of the strongest tier 10s in the game. I'd say it's worth about 16 to 15,000 gold. It's just an incredible tank. Skoda T27 is an absolute bop. I'd say that's worth about 5,000 gold. Skoda T56 is an absolute bop. I'd say that's worth about 5,000 gold. And the TSL7 Defender is mid. Don't get it. I'd say it's worth 4,000 to 3,500 gold, honestly, because why get the TSL7 Defender when there's the Defender Mark 1, which is just flat better? So that's kind of how I see it. We are halfway through the list. It's kind of crazy how many vehicles there are. Cobra, Lance, and CML 1951 Stayer Waffenträger. Stayer is pretty fun. I'd say it's worth about 2,000 to 2,500 gold. And Mill 1951, I'd say 5,000 gold. Lance and C, 4,500. Cobra, 10,000 gold. I think the Cobra is a beast. And while it is a little, hard to play for maybe the average player, I still think it's worth about 10,000 gold. T22 medium IS6, T77 Kunzpanzer. Kunzpanzer is very fun. 2,500 to 3,500 gold is a decent deal for that tank. T77, I'd say, is worth about 7,000 to 6,000 gold because they keep selling it for like 8,500. So if you can get a decent deal on it, not bad. IS6 is mid, don't buy it. And T22 medium, I'd say, is worth 15 to 17,000 gold. Really, really good vehicle. Definitely one of the strongest mediums in tier 10 right now. I would say the T77 is definitely one of the most important pickups out of all the auction. It is an incredibly overpowered vehicle, and if you're looking for a tank that's not only fun, not only well armored, but earns good credits, the T77 is the way to go. All right, Object 268 version 4, M4 882 Rampanzer, Tornvon, and T34. T34 is mid, especially when you compare it to the vehicle called the Tornvon, so don't really get the T34. Tornvon is one of the more overpowered tier 8s. It has a nearly impenetrable turret, it has great gun depression, and weirdly good accuracy for a 120 millimeter. I would say the Tornvon is worth around 7,000 to 6,000 gold. M4 882 Rampanzer, I'd say is worth 5,000 to 6,000 gold. It's actually really fun. It's got decent DPM, good accuracy. It's a really, really solid vehicle. Unfortunately, it does have a big old hongler bongler on the roof, which is a fairly sizable weak spot. We have the Object 268 version 4. It's actually still a great vehicle. If you're a beginner, it's probably the best beginner tank in the game, in tier 10. It still has high alpha at 650. It has good DPM. It has really good armor. I'd still say the V4 is a solid tank. 16,000 to 15,000 gold is a decent deal for the 268 version 4. WZ1115A, Vickers MBT, AMX CDA, and Sphere. Don't pick up the Sphere. It's just a waste. AMX CDA 105. I just don't love it that much. I'd rather get a Kanonen. I'd say it's worth about 4,000 gold. Vickers MBT, 7,000 to 6,000 gold. It's one of the strongest tanks in tier 8. I'd consider it overpowered. The armor profile, the alpha, the mobility, everything about the MBT is insane. Definitely recommend that tank. WZ1115A is solid, but unfortunately it still lacks in the penetration department. If Wargaming ever buffs the pen, it'll be amazing, but I'd say it's worth about 15 to 14,000 gold. Object 452K Astron Rex ISU 130 and Type 5 Kari. 452K is actually amazing after they buffed its gun, and I'd say it's worth about 10,000 to 8,000 gold. Astron Rex is all right. I'd say 5,000 gold. ISU 130, 4,000 to 4,500 gold. And Type 5 Kari, I'd put it at around the 5,000 to 5,500 gold mark. All right, Object 907, Bisante C45, WZ122TM, and Super Hellcat. Super Hellcat's literally going to be sold for free fairly shortly. Don't get it. 122TM is great. I'd say it's 5,000 to 6,000 gold. It's basically a heavy tank, but turned into a medium. I absolutely love that. I think it's a beast. Bisante C45 is actually incredible. It's got good turret armor, solid mobility. It's got a really good auto-reloading mechanic. I'd say the Bisante is worth about 6,000 to 5,000 gold. The Object 907 is one of the strongest tier 10 mediums, right up there next to the T22 medium with the level of DPM, the fact that it has tracer shells, the overall mobility. I'd say the 907 is worth around 15 to 17,000 gold. All right, we are up to 88 to 85, Eric Concept 1, Jagdtiger 88, Kampfpanzer 07, and the Shark. Eric Concept 1, I'd say, is worth about 10,000 to 8,000 gold. It's a fantastic tier 9 medium, especially for the 360 damage per shot it has. Really, really fun vehicle. Yag Tiger 88 is an incredibly strong tank, but it's also sold a lot. I'd say the Yag Tiger 88 is worth about 3,000 to 4,000 gold. Kampf Panzer 07, I'd say, is worth about 5,000 gold. Very fun, high alpha, medium. I actually enjoy it. High alpha, I mean by 240 alpha. It's just a little bit higher for the 90 millimeters category. And the Shark, it's been sold so many times that I'd say, honestly, it's not worth a crazy amount of gold at this point. 6,000 to 5,000 gold. All right? 89 to 92, Concept 1B, TS5, Type 59, and the Smasher. Well, the Concept 1B, I'd say, is worth about 17 to 16,000 gold. It's really just an incredible tank. It's on par with the E6 for its capabilities. Definitely recommend. TS5, mediocre, don't get it. Type 59, really, really strong after they've given the vehicle the special mechanic of adaptive concealment. Really, really nice. It's also fairly mobile. It's got a really solid gun. Type 59 is a great choice. And then the Smasher, this is one that obviously... Oof, this is a tricky one. Type 59, I'd say, by the way, is worth about 5,000 to 4,000 gold. Smasher, I'd say... 12,000 to 10,000 gold is a decent deal for the tank. If you're paying any more than that, it's not worth it. T55A, Stridsvon 81, Kyler, Type 57. Well, I'd say the 55A is actually amazing. After the buffs, it's the highest DPM medium in Tier 9. It's got great levels of mobility, solid turret armor, overall very, very good tank. I'd say the 55A is worth about 8,000 to 7,000 gold. Stridsvon 81, don't get it. Kyler, fantastic Tier 8 heavy. It's actually a really, really underrated tank. I'd say it's worth about 6,000 to 5,000 gold. And the Type 57, I'd say, is worth about 6,000 to 7,000 gold, as it's one of my favorite Tier 8 heavies. It has 9 degrees of gun depression, 430 damage per shot, reticle calibration, good mobility, and ridiculously strong hull down capabilities. It's like a 252 on steroids. Really, really, really good tank. All right, we are now at the 100th list. What do we have? Stridsvon K, Kampfpanzer Project 68 Proto, Luva, and STG. Well, the Stridsvon K is mediocre. I'd say it's about 15,000 to 14,000 gold. It's a solid tank, but it definitely has some big downsides. Kampfpanzer Project 68 Proto is solid, but I feel like there's better options. I'd say about 5,000 to 6,000 gold. Luva, don't bother. And STG, I actually love. I think it's a really fun tank. I'd say 5 to 4,000 gold is a decent deal for the STG guard. Object 260, Hawk 30, AMX M449, and the Helsing. Helsing's a great tank. I'd say 3,000 to 4,000 gold. AMX M449, don't bother. I'd say maybe 2,000 to 4,000 gold for that tank. Hawk 30 is just a slightly better RE251, but I don't really recommend it. And the Object 260 is fast, but meh. I'd say the Object 260 is worth about 14 to 15,000 gold. It's probably the least recommended tier 10 out of the bunch. Lorraine 50-ton AMX Defender, Centurion Mark 5-1 Titan Charioteer. Don't get the Titan Charioteer. It's hella mid. Centurion Mark 5-1, I'd say, is worth about 5,000 gold due to the amount of times they've sold it. AMX Defender, I'd say, is worth about 4,500 gold. And the Lorraine 50-ton, even though it's a fairly rare vehicle, has now been sold 2 times outside of the stupid, ridiculously hard drop chance, so I wouldn't even say it's that rare anymore. The vehicle itself is rather mediocre. Does have a decent gun, but I don't love it. I'd say it's worth about 7,000 to 6,500 gold. The next list we have, 777 SMV Vipera, K2, and the IS-2 Shielded. IS-2 Shielded, don't bother. K2 is the strongest of the Soviet heavies in Tier 8. I'd say it's worth about 6,000 to 5,000 gold. Vipera, I'd say is worth about 7,000 to 8,000 gold, honestly. I think it's one of the strongest Tier 8s in the game. It's actually the second highest performing in win rate. It's kind of overpowered due to that double shot mechanic. Really, really good vehicle. Object 777 version 2 is really, really good in terms of DPM. It's got good mobility. It's one of the stronger tier 10 heavies. I'd say it's worth about 16 to 17,000 gold. BZ58-2, TS60, Carnarvon Defender, Object 590. I'd say the BZ58-2 is not a good tank to buy. It's just a worse 50 TP. So because of that, I'm not even going to tell you how much gold I think it's worth. TS60, I'd say 6,000 to 7,000 gold. Really, really good tier 8 tank destroyer. Incredible levels of DPM. I actually really like it. Carnarvon Defender, don't bother buying. It's a worse mill and a 1951. And then we have the Object 590, which is great, but you have to remember the Vickers is also being sold, and I think the Vickers MBT is slightly better. However, because there's only like 150 of them for sale, I'd say the 590 is a solid pickup as well. Right now, the 590 is being sold in the stores for like 7,500, 8,000 gold, so if you want to pick them up for sale on the auctions, I'd say you'd have to be getting it for about 6,000 gold to be a decent deal. All right, Kampfpanzer 50 ton VK168, otherwise known as Flossie's mom, WZ112-2 in the T6 Dracula. Dracula's worth about 7,000 to 8,000 gold, I'd say. It's a fun tank, but I can't say it's anything crazy in gold. Maybe 6,000, but I don't know. It's not a tank I'd recommend to buy. 112-2 is mediocre. I wouldn't recommend it. 168, don't buy it. Then we have the Kampfpanzer 50 ton, which is one of the strongest mediums in tier 10. I'd say the Kampfpanzer 50 ton's worth about 15 to 17,000 gold. Scharfute Chair 4, E75 TS, T2065 in the Lightbringer. I would put the Scharfute Chair 4 as one of the stronger tier 9 mediums. I'd say it's worth about 8,000 to 7,000 gold. E75 TS is just a worse Kyler, but it is still solid. I'd say about 5,000 gold. Sheriff, don't bother, and the Lightbringer, don't even consider the Lightbringer at all. 114 SP2, T2020, T34-3 Shrek. Well, the Shrek's great. I'd say the Shrek is fantastic. It's worth about 6,000 to 5,000 gold. I wouldn't recommend the T34-3. I wouldn't recommend the T2020. And the 114 SP2 is mediocre. I'd say it's worth about 14 to 15,000 gold. It's not bad. It's just not good either. Caro 45 ton, Charlemagne 274A, and the Forest Witch. Caro is one of the best tier 10s in the game. I'd say it's worth about 16 to 18,000 gold. I absolutely love it. Charlemagne, another great vehicle. I'd say it's worth about 5,000 to 5,500 gold. 274A, meh, 5,000 gold. Forest Witch, it's actually kind of overpowered. It's the number 1 performing tier 7 in the game. I would say the Forest Witch is worth about 5,000 to 6,000 gold. And then we finally get to the last lot of vehicles. We have the XM66F Chieftain T95 ST262 version 2 and the Gravedigger. Gravedigger, don't bother buying. ST62, but don't bother buying. Chieftain T95, don't bother buying unless you like high DPM, I guess. And then we have the XM66F, which is like one of the more overpowered tier 8s in the game. I'd say the XM66F is worth about 17 to 18,000 gold. If it's cheaper than that, it's a great deal. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the entire list of auction tanks. These videos take a lot of effort and a lot of time to make, so please consider smashing that subscribe button down below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye!